Good morning, everybody. It's an honor and a pleasure to open this morning's session for our presenters that are I've had the pleasure of seeing several times, and they're excellent. You're going to get a very good presentation this morning, and they're I think the title is Tapwewin in our language. That's how it's in our my Soto language is the truth, and so I think that you're in for a treat. But with that, I'm just going to say a quick prayer for us to start our day in a positive way, and to keep Creator in our hearts and our minds, and that we open, stay in the conference today. Very important. And this morning I was reading some more articles on HIV and how Saskatchewan has the highest rates, and that of course Indigenous people are the number is higher than the population. So that it's very sad, but you know, hope. I've met some of the Indigenous advocates from Alberta and BC, and we have some really good people that are working on behalf of that. And one of the things that I'm really proud of in Saskatchewan, and one of the leading, I think, in the whole province, is the Sturgeon Lake, and what they're doing in wellness, in the area of wellness, and I think Willie and his partner will bring some of that awareness, and some of the things that communities can do to help one another in the area of wellness. With that, I'm going to say a quick prayer that we started off in a good way and stay positive, and Creator gets you home safe. Some of you will be traveling home soon, whether today or tomorrow. And with that, I don't use the mic, so I'll just say it quietly, and say it in your own way, however you create with your higher power, whether it's God or a Creator. Miigwech. Thank you. Amen.
You can go ahead and have a seat if you'd like. I'll just put my bag down too, out of the way. All right. Well, thank you again, Elder Judy. That was a wonderful way to open today. And I just wanted to say briefly, halito, so Chief Michelle Johnson-Jennings, michahaine inkis hopukuna, Choctaw hoke. I am Michelle Johnson-Jennings, and it's my great honor to moderate this opening session. And I am from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. So if you just humor me for a moment, in our ways, we recognize the ancestors of this land before we speak. And I wanted to give recognition to them, but we also recognize the ancestors that we bring into this room today. And so I wanted to also give them honor, as each of us bring in our ancestors from a long line, and I bring in mine from the Choctaw Nation, and just thank them for being with us. I'm an Indigenous health clinical psychologist, so it's with great passion and excitement that I'm here today, and looking forward to hearing about land-based healing. I've been working with land-based healing with my own tribal community and a couple of others, so I know the importance and the value of this. And I was just reminded yesterday from an elder that though we are Indigenous people from many diverse backgrounds with different knowledge systems, different ways of being, different ancestral practices, and our original instructions. We hold some core values that overlap throughout the Americas, and one of those is our relationship to the land. And it's not just that land holds this space or place, but land is actually our mother, and that's a shared view, and with all our languages, we have words for her and how she relates to us. And it's through this land that we receive teachings, and we receive our guidance, and that we receive those stories and those ancestral memories that have been held by her throughout the ages. And so, as we move forward, we know that Western science is, I say, starting to catch up. As a psychologist, I know that as we go out on the land, we have research now that shows our brain lights up in different ways. We get these neurochemicals. It's good for depression. It's good also because if we do health interventions out of the land, we also have found that long-term behavioral health changes are more likely amongst all people. And so it just offers a wealth of opportunity, and it's wonderful that we have such wise knowledge keepers with us today. And I'd like to open this up to Willie Ermine, a knowledge holder and philosopher from Sturgeon Lake, as well as Norma Rabbitskin, a knowledge holder and nurse from Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. And without further ado, I'll ask them to step forward. Thank you. Yokoke.
Hanwagu magantik. Tatamskat na anigan. I smile because I call you my relatives. I acknowledge all of you. I acknowledge each and every one of you. Your family, your spirit helpers, your ancestors, I acknowledge them. We have those back home too, and we have them with us here today. I'd like to preface, also to thank Alex and Malcolm and the other organizers and Judy for the prayer. You know, I cling on to that prayer as well. I don't say anything that's going to be, that's going to hurt anybody. But thanks, Alex and Malcolm, for inviting us. And I want to preface this talk a little bit. I'm more of a philosopher than an actual doer. I'd like to preface the talk with a little bit of philosophy about our human community, Sturgeon Lake. We come from, our minds come from a long way. Our mind is, we've attached our minds to our ancestors from way back. In the memory work that we do with the old people. And we still have a few old people we work with. But as a human community, we recognize, and it's spelled out in our research protocol, that we recognize that we were put on this land you know, right in Sturgeon Lake with all our people, about 3,000 of us. We were put there by something quite powerful, much more powerful than we are. And so we recognize ourselves as a human community. And when we talk about health and we talk about any of these matters about our humanity, you know, it's very existential for us when we do things. Like say, for example, in the health field which we work in. It's existential, and it's much more than the physicality of the health, the whole health as it's been presented by the Western world. It's much more. It involves our land. It involves our mosquitoes and our mice and our birds and everything that else, the trees and the plants, the medicines that also live with us in Sturgeon Lake, and we call these our band members. So we tell people when they come to Sturgeon Lake, don't hurt our band members. Don't swat the mosquitoes. So if you come to Sturgeon Lake, don't swat any mosquitoes. They choose to live with us, and so we respect them for that. Our truth is about us as a human community. There are so many truths out there. We're still searching. Even in my age, I still feel very young in terms of the knowledge field that's out there about human communities and what is our role as humans on this earth. So this is, of course, related to the research, HIV, and the different cultural work that we do in Sturgeon. And the first point I want to just make, and I want to make this about a 15-minute, I think it's about 15 minutes, right? Each of us, approximately. And I want to talk about three things: the ethical space, and then also the cultural response framework. I mean, two things, okay? The ethical space is oh yeah, here it is. Let me get this right here. So those are the points I want to cover. You have to have a better arrangement here. Okay. The ethical space. The ethical space is an article. You can probably Google my name and then find in there somewhere that article that talks about the ethical space. But it's been building up for a long time, and then one of the primary reasons why I wrote about it is because I did when I was going to graduate school, I found problems in the way research was done. So I wrote specifically about research and the ethics, because I also come from a community, and I had very traditional parents that taught me about the world and spirituality and our people as Nihiyowa Cree people. And so I came from a knowledge system, and I was fully aware of that. And when I entered the university, I was seeing something totally different, disguised as Aboriginal knowledge and all that. And I was very critical. But the ethical space, as if we can understand it, could be between worldviews. Okay, it's that space between worldviews. If you meet somebody with a different worldview, there's a space in between the two of you that needs to be reconciled. Or it could be between cultures, and these would be the human communities. Maybe it's if I meet, I'm a Nihio, I'm a Cree person. If I meet a German, for example, what is we have different worldviews, different cultures, different upbringings, different understandings about the world. So it's that space that divides us. That's that space I'm talking about. So it's a distance between cultures, and it's that void between the human communities of people. Now, particularly in research and a lot of the health work that's being done, it's very many cases cross-cultural. We have Western medics or Western, people from the Western health system coming into our community, plunking down their ideas of Western ideas into our human community, and very much just like research, this is very unethical. This is unethical. This is not how you treat other people. So to impose yourself, thinking that you yourself have the grandest and the best solutions, but this is all wrong. This is unethical. That's why we talk about ethics, because these unethical things were happening with institutions, research, education, you name them, in terms of how they engage with our people. It's also that space between you and the other, wherever you meet the other. You can walk down a street here and you'll meet somebody asking for a couple loonies, or perhaps somebody in a wheelchair, or perhaps somebody that's dark, or somebody else in a different outfit. It's the other, And the important point to consider there in that meeting is, what is your reaction to this other? So it's that unseen space between what I call two strangers. You know, how do you react? What is your capacity to understand what's going on when you meet another stranger? You can know yourself superficially by name, perhaps, you know, but at the deeper levels, there needs to be a greater understanding. Now, this space that needs to be reconciled and to be understood, it's a concept, it's a philosophical idea. That space, I would say right now with Western institutions, they don't recognize that space. It just doesn't enter their mentality that there could be such a thing as the ethical space in the work that they do, in presenting themselves into community and imposing their ideas with their wallets and you name it, you know, all the state apparatus that they've been privileged with and coming into community trying to save our people. They have to. This ethical space has to be acknowledged, and if it's not acknowledged, then it doesn't exist. Then the status quo remains, and we have all these heavily funded institutions coming in, armloads of funds to work in our communities. That the reason why that exists, why we have institutions being funded in our communities not funded, that's unethical. There's so many different reasons why we need to think about this ethical space. So ethics is about a philosophical idea, a concept. It's about the unseen, unspoken area between worldviews, communities, people, and it's very influential. It's very influential. But we come from a world where matters of heart and spirit are primary. We have our younger sister with us co-presenting, and she knows about these matters of heart and spirit. You know, that the sensitivity of our people to other things, the unseen, the unspoken. Our people are highly sensitive to everything that's happening, not only in the human world, but also in the natural world. Keep me informed of the time here, please. It's about a spiritual reconciliation that if you come into our communities with the ethical space deeply embedded in your neurons, your thinking, your understanding, then the next step is spiritual reconciliation. You know, those mosquitoes and mice and eagles and other animals and plants in our communities, you know, those are our people that we communicate with. We work with those beings, those sentient beings. And it's all happening at the spiritual, unseen, very influential level. These need to be included in the work that is being done in this whole health field, in research, and you name it. And who better to guide you than the people who have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years? That is the essential message that I've seen throughout my own life, and that's what the old people have talked about. It's so when we talk about engagements and community relationships and how we do work and how we become competent, indeed, how we become competent. All of us want to be competent in the work that we do. We want to find solutions. We want to find results. We want competency. We want to feel proud as being competent people in the work that we do, not incompetent people. So it's about the what are the capacities, what gives you competence? Our old people have told us it's the spiritual world, it's the physical world, it's that holism, it's the land, it's how you engage with the natural world. This is what gives you competence. Indeed, all our programs are guided by this giving our lives back to the Creator and telling the Creator, we'll do your work for you, but guide us. We are just little children. We don't know what we are doing. Take us to the next level. Take us where you want to. We'll work for you in whatever it is, whatever you want for us to do. We'll work for you. But guide us and look after our families in the meantime when we're out there in the world doing this work for you. It's these philosophical, spiritual ideas that have resonance, that are real for us. That is the truth. When we talk about the truth, that's what it takes to be competent, to accomplish what it is we're trying to accomplish in the whole health field. So it's the real energies of people. Sensitivity, high sensitivity is about the real energies of people. It's your energies that are going to drive your competency. What kind of energies are you using? I hope it's not just the mental, cognitive energies. So ethical space, I can go on and on, morals, values, ethics, but when we start using the ethical space, then we're talking about the real substantial relationships, the real competencies that can emerge if we use our spiritual resources, much like our sweat lodge and our ceremonies and our language and the land, and perhaps bring in a bird to help us, or maybe a rock or a plant like we do back home. We have a pharmacy of all these natural plants that we work with. Those are all little beings that we work with. We're not the healers, it's the natural world, and it's a matter of using the natural world for health. Huh? 5 minutes? Good. I show you this because, our truth is that we're not begging for anything in communities, with the health of our people. When we ask for funding, when we ask for anything in our communities, we're not begging for them. There are all these rights that are behind us, treaty rights, the medicine chest clause. You have these international documents which remind us of unfinished business in terms of the relationship that we have with the rest of Canada. Yesterday I talked to the other conference over here, and I reminded them about a parallel system of health, a parallel knowledge, and that, you have the whole Western health system. Well, there is a Cree knowledge health system. Let me tell you that right now, in case you don't know, that there is an Indigenous knowledge system, health system in place. And that is many times what we're trying to do memory work on, recover, and implement in our communities. So it's, I use this metal picture here. This is 1876, but if you look at it today, our grandfather standing proud there, what does this picture look like today? It's that general, still proud and probably clutching on his funding money on one side, shaking hands on the other. But we ourselves are probably kneeling down and being discoursed in a nation as begging for all these things that are due to us. That's how a society has been constructed. It's not God's will that kind of society exists. It's because of human people with a certain mentality that have built structures and systems not being able to acknowledge the other. They're very narcissistic. They only think of themselves, and they don't think of our communities. So anyway, I have about 2 minutes, so I'll get into Cultural Response Framework. And this has been developing for quite a while, and in fact, it's a document. But just to give you a hint, you can get this document. Just to give you a hint, what it contains is strategic directions. One is to restore First Nations community-based health and wellness systems. The minds of elders have they were brought together in the province to identify their concerns or their vision. And these are strategic directions. They said, we need to develop our own systems. Establish a middle ground for engagement between mainstream. The hospitals, we walk into a hospital and we look around trying to see ourselves in a hospital. There's no responsiveness, from a physical medical system. There's no response from that X-ray, from any of those. Those are not heart and soul. So responsiveness, where's the language? Yesterday when I was at the health summit, I asked the people, where are the brown faces in this crowd that I'm addressing? And you're talking about integration with our people? And strategic direction is transforming mainstream health services to be culturally responsive, and and there's so much to each of these, and I'll just mention one which is quite important, is to develop our medical system, our plant knowledge, our traditional health healing knowledge. And that's what we do in Sturgeon Lake. We have a pharmacy of all the plants that we work with. We have the sweat lodge. The past 2 years we've done all our ceremonies, and we work with the youth, we work with the elders. We have a kukums, and we have a mushrooms group, and we have what Norma's going to be talking about. So it's a big world out there, and it really doesn't do us any good to be hoarding this knowledge that we're working on. But we want to see ethics in how we implement it. We no longer want to feed the major university research institutions our knowledge, and they get fatter and fatter and fatter. In the meantime, our communities are getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. We want to develop our communities as a viable health system that perhaps other human communities can come and use, because I know there have been many write-offs in the Western medical system. Many people don't have doctors. Well, these people come to us, and we have to take them. So anyway, that's, if you want more information, come to Sturgeon Lake. Make a conference about how we do these parallel systems. So I thank you anyway, Norma.
Danse, dat am skaden og akio no humaganak nuts na nasko mau kehte ga tonak kagakis mustamago yakanuts. Ni stiga sanut sawana goten piso school Big River First Nation Ocha. My borrowed name is, my English name is Norma Rabbitskin. I come from Big River First Nation. I've also been working with Sturgeon Lake for the past 20 years. Been a nurse over 30 years or more, I forgot the count. But I come from a cultural background as well. I've been immersed in our traditions ever since I can remember. My first language is Cree. So I'm here to talk about where my brother left off on research Sturgeon Lake First Nations research protocols and the research that we're undertaking. I've been really blessed to be accepted and welcomed in our home community in Sturgeon Lake. It's been a very, I found my foundation there because the community has been practicing their ceremonies, their ways of being, and so I had a nice fit. I've come from a diverse nursing background, but Sturgeon Lake is a transferred community where they've taken their health programming and are delivering their health services within the community, and they're managing their programs. So when they were given an opportunity to take ownership of their health, they built that system to what it was today. When Health Canada was delivering health in that community, they were working with one nurse and one CHR. So when health transfer was, they took over the community, we have a staff of over 26 staff now. We have 5 nurses, and we work with the community. So as a community health nurse, overseeing the 3 streams as well, working with the community and laying that foundation of culture. We want to root that cultural foundation. It is through that guidance. So, and research has been a vehicle that was used to make change, to be responsive to the quality of care that is needed in our community, and also to bring the community back to revitalizing the culture. And so I've been happy to utilize my culture and my knowledge that I come with. And so it was so critical that we also have to establish the governance structure that needed to. So my brother, and with the help of the elders and the knowledge keepers, they've developed this research protocol, and we've been privileged to welcome back home Willie in our community to lead the traditional health programming. So this is the first thing that he took a lead. So the Sturgeon Lake First Nations research protocol that you see there, it's been developed primarily by using 3 different resources of research principles relevant to our community. The first source of the Indigenous knowledge statement developed by the elders that sets out the community rights and interests that flow from the community's creators given autonomy as one of the human cultures of the world that is practiced in our community. The second source is the First Nations Governance Center's principles of OCAP, which is so critical. And this is something that we're being challenged every time we do research. We want to own our data, the ownership of the data, control of the data, access principles, and the ability to, and also the possession of the principles that are mentioned, that my brother mentioned. And then the other thing that we also recognize, the CAHR have also included the chapter 9 on research involving the First Nations, and this is something that is also a protection for us, so we're not practiced on, we're not experimented on, and when you see the horrific history that we've been experimented on in the past, and it's, we don't want to go through that anymore, so it's mentioned there. And so this is our guiding document. So every time that we do research, so all the research done with the community through any research, they will have to adhere to these research protocols. So this document has been approved through BCR with our leadership, and now it's been entered with the University of Saskatchewan as well. And so this is the first document that they also have to accept and work through. So as my brother said, that our minds have come a long way, and it is true that through the history of our people, I'm going backwards here. Okay. No, okay. No, we're going forward. So our minds come from a long way, and this is a picture of the ancestors that continue to guide our people, the ancestral knowledge, and it is through that knowledge that we seek, and it is through the knowledge of this is Willie's ancestry and our relatives, and actually I'm related to Willie because we come from Stony Lake, his late mom, and that's where my ancestry is from. So when we talked about harmonizing the traditional and Western approaches, and when he talked about the ethical space, we're talking about that center, in the center, which is the ethical space. For us, as when we're engaging with us, we're not disease focused. We're looking at the wellness of the model, and that's the model that we are striving to build in our community. To us, you're limiting yourself when you're thinking with the deficit thinking, disease focus. You can't build from deficit thinking. So this is from our worldview that you have to create a vision, and for us, you have to create a wellness model that respects the holistic, the four aspects of the whole person, and also respects the individual's sacred point of views, the sacred journey, and is supported by the family, and also the family is supported by the community. So when we're looking at those models, there's many levels of that, and then that's one of the Western system does not recognize that model. So we're building that system. So we're going to be talking about our cultural side, on the traditional side, when we're doing wellness, when we're doing research. So that's what we guide our research at the moment when he was talking about that it has to build a system that is going to be responsive and that is culturally accepted. And we're also decolonizing a lot of our, not only with the Western practitioners, but also we're also decolonizing of our people because they've been programmed. They have given away their power for all these years. Now we're giving back those cultural teachings. It is those teachings that come from Creator. And as we're reminded from our creation story that we were given the power to make those decisions, and you have the power to heal yourself. And so it is through participating with with other research partners, and I mentioned some of the current research that we're involved with that speaks to that. And Mama Okamatun is one that we've started. We've been doing research back in 2000, over 10 years. And so Mama Okamatun is a second phase, and it's talking about enhancing health and wellness, utilizing this is an intervention, the Green Light Project, which is celebrating the successes in the communities, changing their healthy behaviors of not smoking inside their homes, but where their celebration is, we give them a green light, and that shows that they're smoking outside and not predisposing their children with a secondhand smoke. And this research is currently still going, and with Dr. Vivian Ramsden, and we've presented internationally with this, and there's been article papers on that, and then the second one that is ongoing is case management in primary care for frequent utilizers of healthcare services research project with Dr. Hudson. And this is how do we manage case management in the community when we have to align our services, the three streams that work together, and how to provide that patient-centered care where they're at. Whereas right now, historically, the nurses were delivering their programs separately, whereas we're trying to bring this and utilizing our knowledge of Mama Okamatun and how we can be better effective. The promoting safety, medication safety in our community was just completed with Dr. David Blackburn, and that's utilizing pharmacy as well, a pharmacist, because currently we do have 2 systems that operate in our community, and we're also trying to improve the how patients are supported with their medication use, and a lot of our people are not being supported in understanding their medications. So this has been a good experience for that. And we're also on another youth-focused called Access Open Minds, and that's looking at improving mental health services in the community and how responsive are we. This one we utilize the Western system where they're using the mental health therapist, but at the same time, we're using the culture side, and we're utilizing our elders or traditional health programming. And this is the part that Willie was talking about working with the giftedness of the youth. And this is going to be finishing in fall, and we will. It'll be interesting to hear our perspective about how to support our youth with the cultural interventions, and that's so. Stay tuned with that. So the other one that we're currently involved is enhancing and expanding the Know Your Status initiative with Dr. Skinner. Our take is we've been doing. When we transferred, we've been providing services, point-of-care testing in the community already. So this is for us, we're past the engagement, we're now in the transformation stage, we're utilizing peers to be the support systems and to ground with cultural. This is the part we're focusing. I know there's 6 communities are currently doing the Know Your Status and improving screening. So the other research that we're currently involved was being collaborators of bringing back birth and restoring those cultural birthing practices, the teachings, using the matriarchs, and we're doing the curriculum development, we're empowering the community, giving that back, the ownership back to our kukums and our grandmothers to be the leaders in instilling those teachings back to our young moms, because we're seeing a lot of high complexities of pregnancies and further predisposed with the high rates of HIV as well now. So we have a number of things that we're utilizing. So lastly, we're also, with our research with Dr. King, Health for People Who Use Drugs is the one that we want to talk to you about. I know there's other upcoming research projects we're going to be partaking in the near future, as well as the spirituality with HIV, and that's with Dr. Tony Tapatwa, who's over there. So stay tuned with that, and also with Dr. Malcolm King with wellness. So health for people who use drugs is a research that we had just undertaken this past year. And that's utilizing all cultural intervention tools to bring back wellness. And so we utilized our cultural intervention, our ways of being. We grounded the project with ceremony first. The team had to go through that whole experience of what our participants were going to go through. So they had to come for 4 days into our community and do ceremony and land-based and go through that cultural intervention tool that we use, the Medicine Wheel Spirit Shadow Dance with Dawn Turner and Jack Haste. So that was done, and they had to know what they were going to put our people through. And so at the same time, when we were doing this, we provided also the cultural camps to our participants. Our family also had to understand the creation story narratives, which was shared with Jerry Saddleback. A lot of the support was given also with the sessions with grief and loss, Circle of Life teachings, the Medicine Wheel teachings facilitated by knowledge keepers, and land-based learning. And Willie has really spent a lot of time with our participants and teaching them about the protocols that, access to ceremony, learning to medicine, harvesting, life skills, moose hide tanning. So those are critical life skills that are, it builds their character. And so this is a picture of that cultural intervention, building that medicine bottle that I was referencing to. So that they had to experience being in that circle. It's one thing when you open with ceremony, you open that portal, and that something magic happens in there, and because you call in those helpers from the four directions, and then to be part of that. So the participants were also given opportunity to access traditional healing with the healers, access to also refills for detoxing, recognizing that, and also that it's a process, and we had to meet them where they're at, and it was a lot of being patient with them. So, and there's also the revitalization. There was a couple of our women that partake in our project with revitalizing birthing and wanting to go through learning about how to parent and revitalizing their knowledge. So community detox is having access to traditional medicine ceremonies, and we've had a number of them that have went through that, and access to traditional counseling with the elders, and our intuitive counselor here, Sarah, and on access to alternative therapies, energy healing, Reiki, intuitive, I already said that. And then as a whole, we really worked well with the health staff, because we had to do a better way of doing workshop delivery. So we call that Mamokamatu, and working together for pathways of wellness. So we start off, it's a 4-day workshop. We start off grounding with with traditional teachings, and that's done with Willie and myself. And that's been a better way of doing things with workshops. And this is where I left off. I'll leave off. We're working with Sarah, and Sarah is a valuable resource to us. She was trained on a Western paradigm, but with her intuitiveness and her intuitive gift, she understands our worldview, and so she's been really helping us and working together and providing the counseling as well. So she's part of our team as well. So she's going to come and talk to you about some of our projects where we are at.
Which button do you push?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm sure many of you are wondering why I'm up here. I'm wondering the same thing. I was wondering the same thing this morning. Why am I up here? Why am I up here? And I know the logistics of it, that I work with Sturgeon Lake First Nation. But on that deeper level, why am I up here? And so I thought of many reasons, and I'm sure there will be more to come after I'm finished, and that's usually how it goes, right? Why we are where we are, we don't always know when we're going through it, but afterwards, we get realizations as we continue on with our life. So if you look at the screen, what is that stating? What is that saying? And to me, it shows that as individuals in a community are connected with their culture, their level of well-being improves. And that's what everyone is finding at Sturgeon Lake First Nation, as well as other places. So health for people using drugs in the community, that's what I want to talk a little bit deeper on. We wanted to look at how the cultural tools are affecting the individuals going through the cultural programming. So the community created an evaluation tool that's called Portrait of Me, and it looks at the individual and how they relate to themselves as an Indigenous person, how they relate to their family, and how they relate to cultural tools in the community. The pretest was administered in May of 2018, and the midway point test was administered in March. So we have yet to finish to do that post. So stay tuned, as Norma said. So we had a hunch. I remember a conversation that we had prior to even doing the pretest, that we might see something different than maybe even what we hoped to see. And this is what we found. So the pretest is the blue, and the midway point is the orange. And so what this really looks at is the level of knowledge. And what you would maybe expect to see is that as people went through programming, their level of knowledge would increase. But this is what we found. This was our hunch, that it actually decreased by about an average of 7%. And in my personal experience of working with Sturgeon Lake, this is exactly what I went through as well. That I thought that I had a higher level of understanding, but my level of understanding went down much more than 7%. So to sum that up, I believe we are unaware of what we do not know, and that there's always going to be that unawareness until we do know. So as participants learned more, their scores decreased, and this showed that there is much more. There's so much more to learn. And that's scary and exciting at the same time. So in conclusion, well, we need a lot more of this. We need more cultural programming for longer. Obviously, 1 year is not enough. And in being involved with this program and involved with the participants, it's such a great experience because you see other indicators that show that there's an increase, right? So when you're working with individuals that are using, there's transiency, there's maybe they're there, maybe they're not. Well, not with this group, not with the cultural programming. They are there, they are in it, they're attending, and there's new participants joining. So the other indicators are showing significance. Okay, so that's where I'm going to end my show. Thank you very much for walking with me along this and not knowing what the heck I'm doing up here. Questions for anyone? Thank you.
So again, I just want to say a big yokoke to all of you for joining us today and sharing with us that wisdom. I know that myself, being a guest on these lands and territory, I am inspired and my spirit is uplifted from hearing about the strengths and the positive things being done at Sturgeon Lake. Elder Willie spoke about the relationship and unseen spaces, and this. And I know I was really moved, especially by you, Elder Norma, as you spoke about the strengths-based approaches occurring within Sturgeon Lake, and really this integrative approach of building from your original instructions, building from your ancestors' teachings, and then moving forward and implementing these things in ways that are good for your community. And it sounds like in a very good way. And thank you again for Sarah for mentioning, you know, it's important to know. I feel like as I get older and as I work more with my own community, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know, right? And that's a valuable place to be in, and to sit and to be open to what there is to know and to be aware. I think from a Western model, we're often taught we have to be the experts. We have to be the doctors. We have to look to them. We have to know things and be definitive. But again, the more that we know that life is a mystery and there are other forces at work, and we need to be open to those so we don't become closed-minded and begin enacting harm in our research or in our health interventions that we do. So again, big Yokoke, thank you very much. Give a round of applause. And now we have a good more than 15 minutes that we'll open it up for questions for our wonderful team. There are microphones, sorry. Let's see, 1 and 2 here.
Yes, thank you all three of you for a wonderful talk. My question actually is for Sarah. I'm a researcher at heart, Malcolm King, and the researcher in me can't help wondering a couple of things about this finding that you present, because it is, I guess, an unexpected finding, at least for people observing your study. And I know it wasn't possible to, well, I don't know if it wasn't possible, but you didn't have a control group as a group of Western researchers might have had, so I can only ask you to speculate. But is taking this portrait of me more than once, has anyone taken the portrait of me independent of this study at repeated times? And is it possible that the more you self-analyze yourself, the more you realize, just as you said, how much you do not know? And so a natural consequence without an intervention would be the score would really decrease or seriously decrease. And what you're seeing actually, it may have been an increase against what might have happened without an intervention. That's my question.
Sorry, I'm not exactly following what the question is. I hear the statement in there, and I think that's a very good point. I never looked at it that way, of how far it potentially would have gone down without the cultural intervention.
Well, in a way, you kind of said that yourself, because you felt that your own score, if you had taken the test, would have decreased, and yet you were not doing the intervention, you were the researcher. So, but you're just one person. I'm wondering if there are other observations like that from people who didn't undergo the intervention.
I don't believe so. Did we do it with anyone else?
We used it with the youth.
With the youth, but they also were in the programming. What about staff? Staff do it?
Yeah, we tested it. But we have a little bit of knowledge, but
Yeah, right.
so we should test it to people that have no cultural
Yeah.
background.
That would be good.
Malcolm, I'll intervene.
Thank you.
This tool we recognize in the scientific world, they have their notions of validity. When we start looking at that spirituality, how do you evaluate spirituality or emotionality or all these other areas? This poses great difficulty. So this document or this evaluative tool is more an experiment. And the point to be made is that we have opportunity in our own community to experiment with our own methods. And we want to understand what's going on here in terms of, we want to be competent, like I said. We want to see competency. We want to see ourselves, being reflected by some growth somewhere, somehow. So the tool itself, I know, may not be scientifically valid, but it starts to bring together, a holistic kind of evaluative tool, and we're still experimenting with. And the point we want to make is, we are experimenting with it, irregardless of what happens, what validity measures there are in the scientific world. We want to do that, and we want to continue developing that. And so we're starting to kind of engage with others to help us maybe to develop that a little bit further.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, it's Alexandra King. I just wanted to add on to what Willie was saying. Sturgeon Lake was incredibly generous in allowing us to do the portrait of me with a second group that was in Vancouver. And we saw similar results there. So again, I know that the tool is under development, but definitely we had similar types of results. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's not only with, it's also, we also use the tool for youth. So they're different experiments. We'll just call them experiments. There are different experiments happening with it.
Hello, I have a question over here. I was waiting before they were. Good presentation. Miigwech, for sharing some of that knowledge with us. And I just wanted to make a comment about that testing evaluation tool. I would call it the humbling evaluation. It really causes one to be humble when you see that it dropping like it did, like the decrease in how much we know. We don't actually know. I really like that. But I wanted to ask about the participants that have been part of this, and I know it's not complete. And you had a midway point. Is there any changes in terms of behaviors over the course of the few months already that you've been working with the 10 participants? And what are some of those changes in the people that are taking part in this? That's my question.
We've seen a change in behaviors, definitely. Some of the participants, I believe 2, have started because they're also were involved in other treatment modalities with methadone. They've been going daily for their methadone drink. So now, because of some of the interventions, they've been given carries. So it's allowed them to more freedom, and also attending the sharing circles. They have more of a rapport with the mental health therapist and also the addictions, and also more attendance to workshops. So these are the feedback that we're being told by our service providers that we work with, because we work together as a team with the health clinic staff and also with traditional health. It's with Willie, who leads the traditional health programming now, and also there's Escapius, and I work alongside with them. So we are engaged with what's happening in the community, so we know what's happening at the community now. There's some that are wanting to come on fast, and they're going to be partaking that this week, I believe next week. So yeah, there is behaviors we see.
And just one more thing on that note. In working with some of the individuals, I see an increase in confidence in their ability to connect with deeper parts of them. So that is really exciting to see from that perspective. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you from a Dene First Nation visitor from Northern British Columbia. My name is Chad Dickey. I'm the board chair of AIDS Vancouver Island in Victoria. Wonderful presentation, and it really struck home for me in my home community of the challenges around substance use and integration of people that live with HIV and other complex issues. A question I have for you is around the portrait of me. This is my take on what I just heard this morning. It seems to relate, how to relate themselves to their family, their community, their culture. And the scores decreasing over time could possibly be, from my perspective, uncertainty enters their thoughts, cognitive dissonance happens. They're starting to have that questioning worldviews and deconstructing their core beliefs, which can be really, really challenging. I've had to do that myself. And one of those things, that's where that opens that ethical space that Willie was talking about earlier. That's the opportunity I see where we can we build a safe space so that people can question those things in a way that's going to move them towards wellness, self-reflective, iterative thinking that can help capacity for developing self-management and learning a little bit more about where they come from. Because I think that real connection back to the land is so important. Just finally, I think one really important piece, we talk about the two eyes seeing and being in two worlds at one time. Does any of this include referrals to counseling and mental health professionals within the predominant system? Because one of the things is we need those papers and those referrals to get services outside. Once you are breaking down your core beliefs, you can have some really serious challenges. And to get within the predominant system, you need those pieces of paper, regardless of if you have support from your elders in your community.
We're taking this from a traditional health perspective. Traditional knowledge informs traditional health. Western medical practices are informed by Western worldviews. Okay, distinction. Now, to make reference to traditional health professionals, and for us in the traditional health field to say, go ask the questions to a traditional mental health counselor is like taboo, almost like taboo. We have our own mental health professionals, and these are the elders, and we do this every month. Say, for example, the sweat lodge, because there's so much that happens in there. Those elders, our next step is to get those elders recognized as mental health professionals, mental health therapists or counselors. The point that I want to make is that, to give you an example, Sarah works in the intuitive field within the community. There was a program, mental health dollars released, for people to apply for, and there were some policies developed, but it's the title that really felt really dirty. It said suicide prevention. That title alone, think about it, suicide prevention dollars. Communities can have access to suicide prevention dollars. Suicide prevention, what an ugly word. We thought, how would traditional health approach this? We turned it around. This suicide prevention is a Western idea. Okay? We turned it around, and what does it look like when we turn it, flip it over, turn it around? And what it told us was that we have gifted people in a community. We have gifted youth in a community. And it's that giftedness that has been diagnosed as a mental health problem. For example, I can be sitting beside Norma, and if I'm really highly sensitive, as is the case with a lot of our young people, even adults, and Sarah can talk about it. If I'm sitting beside Norma and she's angry, and we're youth, 12-year-old youth, for example, and I'm highly sensitive, I pick up her anger, and I become angry. And if I don't understand what's going on, it becomes problematic then. Then I become angry, and I'm diagnosed as an angry child. Then I'm prescribed all these, whatever it is that they inject. And so that becomes the mental health problem in the Western world. In our own community, we recognize highly sensitive, gifted children, youth. And that's what we work with. We work with giftedness, not suicide prevention. We work with giftedness in all these areas. Sarah?
And that's looking at things from more of that wellness model, if you think Western with it. And the giftedness, the high sensitivity, expands across every single one of us, no matter what our background, what our color, And so if we don't start learning about this, and we don't look at it in this perspective, we will just keep doing the same thing over and over again, looking for different results. That was a really good example to use, because I see this lots in my practice, where if you change the environment, then the youth changes. We have a collective mind that we're all connected to, and you can use so many different words for this, whether you're coming at it from science or spirit. But there's something that connects us, and we can intuit what is going on with other people as well as in ourselves. So that's just a little bit more on that. Thank you.
Thank you to the panel, and I'm disappointed that more people aren't here this morning to have heard these wonderful presentations. I'm Denise Worker. I'm here in Saskatchewan. I have a question around, I was struck by what Norma had said, that when Sturgeon Lake transferred, that you had one nurse and one community health representative. And as a transferred community, you have built up the infrastructure to deliver health services in a more holistic model within the community. So my question relates to how your capacity for research has or has not improved your ability also to deliver services. So there is, one-time funding for research, and then that research finishes. So what have you been able to, how are you able to sustain and improve? And are there any lessons learned for other communities so that the research is seen as an opportunity to improve that infrastructure that's so foundational?
We started off with nothing, with the base budget that was given by Health Canada, and it hasn't grown with the population. It's been static. So when we brought in research, it was an opportunity to work with Dr. Smith-Windsor, who is overseeing the residency program. There was a question asked, why are people living with diabetes not being looked after? That was what started our question, our research. And so, it evolved to where it is today. The question keeps rising. Those questions, how can we be improving our services? But our budget never increased, but those inquiries to improving health has kept going, but the budget has not increased. When we collaborate with researchers, it's led by an academic world, and the budget is controlled by them. They give us a token of measly amount of money, and this is the part where we say we have to have equitable opportunities for the money to be held at the community. There's only one research project that has funded us equitably to fund a mental health therapist, which is the Access program, and also to fund a youth coordinator to deliver that research project over 5 years. But the rest, we were given peanuts, like 10,000 there, 20,000 there, but that's not enough. So we keep building, but we're still fighting for that recognition to build capacity in the community. We want to build our community to be community researchers as well. And so that's what we're striving for, and that's what that research protocol speaks to about. And that's our negotiation and how to do research for us. If that's something that, I'm not too sure if that's what you're asking, if the research dollars gives us enough.
Well, your research is generating evidence about what services should be in community in terms of that traditional, those traditional ways. And if there's no feedback loop to, well, that actually requires funding, then I think we are missing an opportunity. So it's about how that evidence is being then used to support funding initiatives for improved services.
Yeah, we do collect our own statistics and we control our own data. We opted to use an open source EMR, even though the system is already have these big vendors. So when we collect our own data, we're able to negotiate with Health Canada. I do agree that we did submit proposals to enhance our harm reduction, and that's our ability, because right now we have to understand we don't have CDC HIV dollars coming to the community at all. It gets eaten up in all those programs. So the challenge is not all the First Nations communities in Saskatchewan have HIV dollars. So we have to go and negotiate with the statistics right now with the numbers that we have. We are in crisis, but as it is right now, as it stands, we don't have HIV dollars going at the community right now, and that's the biggest challenge, that people are misinformed that right now the funding isn't there. And it's in the second level as well, in the third level. There's a lot of disjointed funding, and that's that segregation, which is the biggest struggle that we're finding. And so it is through owning our data, we're able to also negotiate to Health Canada. We're seeing high-risk pregnancy. The prenatal program that you're funding right now is not enough, so we had to go with our proposal to Health Canada to bring birthing back. So in the next 4 years, we're a demonstration project for midwifery and returning so that's another successful funding opportunity for us to showcase that our culture is there. If we're given that opportunity, we can decrease those complexities or the complex cases we're seeing.
So there's
And
no.
I'm sorry, we're a little bit over it. If I can encourage, I think that was a wonderful statement on the state of research and funding and what the issues may involve at the moment. And I think there were wonderful questions that were brought up, but if I could just give a big thank you to our presenters again. Thank you.